everybody. I am Oscar, and doing another Heelcast, and it's once again with someone not a part of the Heel crew. It's with Tyrell Lisson.
Hey.
Hey, do you want to just introduce yourself and just say who you are and what your channel's about and everything?
Yeah, for sure, man. My name's Tyrell Lisson. If you watch my videos, I say that every time at the beginning, so you're probably sick of that by now. But for those of you who don't, yeah, my name's Tyrell Lisson. I do YouTube reviews. My whole shtick is I do reviews under 2 minutes long. Lately, they've been running at under 1:20 long, and I give you 3 pros and 3 cons to a film, so you don't have to read through the long reviews if you really want to go see a movie quick, or you don't really want to go through a whole synopsis. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to stick with the pros and cons and try to give fair reviews to movies. As well, I spent a lot of my time now working with a fellow YouTube creator, and who was also on this show.
The previous
Tim,
one, yeah.
Yeah, Tim from the Late Reviews. And we've started a podcast called Pan Tilt Zoom, where we do film discussion. And our first episode is out with the guys at Flick Fanatics, and we talked about blockbusters and Superman. So yeah,
very good episode that was. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
I had enjoyed, interesting listener, and Tyrell's videos are a good contrast to ours, because where Tyrell does quick stuff, we do quite more long, in-depth type of just. Yeah. More casual type of stuff. So if you want a good contrast of reviews, there you go.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah.
Yeah. So and unlike the one with Tim, like Tyrell mentioned, we don't have anything planned. We're just going to see what comes to mind. And I guess, and this is actually the first time me and Tyrell are actually talking face to face as well. Like we literally have not even a week we started talking on Twitter even as well, so it's more or less like this is a sort of a fly on the wall situation, I guess you would say. We're just going to be talking about stuff that pops to mind and whatnot, and especially since recently Comic-Con has been going on at the time recording this, so it's plenty of fresh stuff there as well to talk about. And one thing I recently been majorly fangirling over, and I will use that phrase, is the leaked Suicide Squad trailer. Did you see this?
Now, here's my interesting thing with Suicide Squad.
Go on.
It's filmed in Toronto mainly.
Yeah.
And I happen to be very close to Toronto. I fortunately enough, and this is where I'll get to it, I haven't seen many of the leaked images. How you ask, it's hard not to, but I haven't seen any of the leaked videos or anything.
You're lucky. It's like even a guy who I don't watch trailers. I watch maybe the teaser. I'm like, if I get interested, I'm done. I'll watch the film. And then I knew I was going to see the Suicide Squad anyway, and then seeing all these leaked, I was like, what? No.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm surprised that you have managed to escape quite a few of them or whatever.
Yeah, and that's for a good reason, because with some films I tend to watch the trailers. With some fandom type things like Star Wars, I just can't help myself. I love Star Wars so much, and I'm really hyped on these new ones. I love J.J. Abrams. I couldn't stop myself from watching the first teaser, then the trailer, and now the behind the scenes that was at Comic-Con. Yeah. But Suicide Squad, I'm holding off for a couple of reasons. Frankly, I'm skeptical, but that's good, because that means I stay away from these things.
Yeah.
Because of 2 things, so I don't spoil myself, and because I'm like, I know I don't need to see it.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't seen anything. I've seen 1 image, really, or 2. I guess I've seen the cast of characters together, and I've seen Jared Leto as the Joker, or that kind of poster promotional image of him or whatnot. But I have not seen the trailer, and I think that's going to do a lot more for me, because I'm going to walk into the theater being a massive fan of David Ayer, being skeptically optimistic about this, and being able to sit down and watch something that's completely new, and I'm really stoked for that.
Well, I mean, I couldn't help myself but watch the leaked trailer, because I was just like, I need to, because I'm a huge Batman fan, and this whole Suicide Squad, when I remember hearing the announcement of this, I was like, this sounds exactly like the animated film Assault on Arkham, which I really enjoyed, that animated film. And when I just heard more about it, I was like, oh my god, this sounds very similar to it. And so I just watched it, and immediately from what I just assumed, it looks like a David Ayer film. It looks like a film. It looks very well shot. And what I mean by it looks like a film, because what I gather from what I've been finding myself with these Marvel Cinematic Universe films is that they're very same. They're very similar. There's not much. I don't see many directors' visions in the Marvel films. Whereas like Man of Steel, I see that film like that's totally a Zack Snyder film.
Right.
With the as much rubbish quality as the bootleg trailer I saw was, I can see that's totally a well shot David Ayer film. I mean, I've only seen End of Watch. He did that, didn't he? Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah, he did.
Yeah. I've only seen that in terms of his directorial stuff. Anything he's done. I do want to see Fury, but I really enjoyed End of Watch, and I was like looking forward to when he was announced as director, and like just watching like the trailer. The thing that just every time I go back to rewatch is like there's an end moment. Like at the very end of the trailer, you see Jared Leto as the Joker, and it's like his laugh and his voice is just it's everything I wanted from Jared Leto as a Joker. I always had faith in him because I'm a Jared Leto fan.
Yeah.
As his acting and his music, I love 30 Seconds to Mars. I love his performances. So I was just hyped, and I love the Joker. So I was just hyped when he was announced as the Joker. And at first, when I did see his image, I was like, I was skeptical. But then I thought, well, you know what? It's different, and it looks like the Joker. It looks like another version of the Joker. It doesn't look like it's not like they gave him red hair. You know what I mean? It's not like they completely changed his look. He looks like David Ayer's Joker in that sense, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, and that that's good. And I'm with you. I love Jared Leto. I think he's a fantastic actor. Recently, obviously winning the Best Supporting Actor
Dallas Buyers Club
award. Dallas Buyers Club was a fantastic film, and he really blended into that. And that's really my determining factor in deciding a good actor. And every actor would be pleased to hear this is when I go see a movie with an A-list celebrity or somebody that's very recognizable. If they blend into a character and you can't tell that it's him or her, they're doing a good job. And that's what separates somebody, regardless. I love The Rock or, I love Arnold Schwarzenegger, but you know that they are The Rock or Arnold Schwarzenegger. They're playing themselves or they're enigmas of themselves. Whereas Jared Leto just completely blended into that role. And I think that's why he'll be good as the Joker. Now, David Ayer, I've seen quite a few of his films. I've seen quite a few of the films he's written, like Training Day, Fast and the Furious.
I forget he did that one,
Yeah, and Fury was a great film. I was very impressed. The cinematography and music was, brilliant. He's got a very strong grasp on his craft as a director, and Fury was one of his, that allowed him to essentially be considered to do a film like Suicide Squad. And I knew that he has a very distinct style, and I'm kind of glad that these films, I've been critical of Marvel films. I've been really critical of DC films. Okay. I have no allegiance to either. Yeah. But what you can really say about anything DC related is that their directors definitely do have their own stamp. And David Ayer does have his own visual aesthetic, and he's going to be applying this to Suicide Squad, and all the power to him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, and as I said, from the very rubbish looking quality I've seen of the Suicide Squad trailer, it looked like a David Ayer film. It looked, from what I've seen of his films, it looked like DC, like Warner Brothers said, do your Suicide Squad. And it's like that's what they seemed to did with Zack Snyder, like do your Man of Steel, and that's why recently I've been more anticipating the DC cinematic universe than I have been just the Marvel. Maybe that's just because DC's just starting off, and we've had 11 Marvel films now, I think.
Yeah, it's some crazy number like that.
So I'm getting kind of like sick of the Marvel thing, because it got to the point where it's like I saw Avengers: Age of Ultron, and I was like, it's the same. And what I mean by that, it's like it's the same structure. It's the same quippy quotes, and the same this is a bad guy that we defeat, and then it's just it's the same structure. It's very predictable. I find each Marvel film personally.
and that's definitely Whedon-esque. I'm a big fan of Joss. I've been critical of the Avengers films. The first
Yeah.
Avengers, I personally think, is one of the most overrated films to date. I didn't
really?
necessarily enjoy it. Ultron, I actually liked more, which is completely opposite of what a lot of people think. But
Opposite
again,
to me,
it's
yeah.
still, it's still not anywhere near a film that I think it could have been.
No.
Whedon's other stuff I really enjoy. Here, I think it's okay, but I get you. And another thing, the Russo brothers are of the same ilk of Whedon. They're nerds that kind of do comedy stuff. Obviously, they're from, a completely different background than superhero movies, and now they're in superhero movies, so you're going to get a similar thing. And obviously, they look to Joss Whedon, who kind of set that style, at least with the Avengers. Even Jon Favreau, he's got a similar style. They've all got similar styles, and I agree with you in that point that they're bringing in directors in DC that have different aesthetics and things. And you need to change that, because you're right. We're getting too much superhero, so the only way to really make that more bearable is having very different superhero films.
Yeah. I mean, with James Wan, James Wan directing Aquaman as well, that's just another thing which I'm like, they got a visionary guy, like a guy who has a specific style to do, like one of their films. I mean, even with Fast and Furious 7, like it's like that's the only one film I've seen as well. But it's like, from what I know of James Wan, I'm like, this is different from all the other ones. It's like he's definitely put his spin to it. And that's why I think DC are really doing the best with. I mean, the only thing with their directors I feel a bit iffy about is their whole thing with the Wonder Woman thing. Like, they're just picking a director because they're a female director, which I'm like, I get what you're doing, but should you really be choosing someone like, hey, maybe we should just find the best director for this film?
And yeah, you're right, because people will quickly point fingers in regards to gender inequality and sexism in this regard, but looking at it, and anybody who listens to this could take this with a grain of salt. As a man, that I won't understand the complexity of the issue, but from being in the film world, from dealing with many women and many men every day who I work with or whatnot, you're right in the regard that you shouldn't be picking a female to direct the movie for the sole fact that because the character is a female.
Yes.
Now, I don't feel like the studio is even doing it for the right reason either. They're doing it because it will attract more money. It will attract more eyes. If you hire Angelina Jolie to do a Wonder Woman movie, everybody's going to look. They hired Angelina. She's already big. She's a woman. She's trying to test herself as a director. And of course, she's going to be paired with a female character. I don't necessarily think that's the right approach. I think they should be going for the best director. And if that happens to be a woman, then it will be a woman.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's less women in the situation than there are men. But the studio doesn't care about that. They're just trying to get a woman to direct their film to make more money. And that's not the right reason. That's essentially going against everything in terms of making a quality film. And, women don't like that either, being essentially used as a pawn by the studio. Nobody likes that. So I don't think I agree with you. That's one iffy point. I also am not too sure about Ben Affleck going forward and directing and having that much control over the film franchises as well as playing one of the main characters in that. I don't know. I think perspective wise that could be a problem, but again, there's nothing to really base that assumption off of other than the fact that maybe I'm biased because I'm not a massive Affleck fan, but we'll see in time. We'll see in time what happens, Yeah,
I agree with that. That is a big risk from Warner Brothers to say, hey, we will give you the Batman film to direct and co-write. That is a pretty big weight on Affleck's shoulders. And I was all for, even before he was announced as Ben Affleck, goodness sake. Before Ben Affleck was announced as Batman, I was always like, he would do a good job at directing a Batman film, because, his 3 films that he's done, I feel, each have elements that will make a really good Batman film. You've got Gone Baby Gone, pretty good, I think it's a really good detective mystery film. You got Batman, the World's Greatest Detective. Got The Town, which he did, which is his more action-packed film that he's done. And that whole heist thing. You look at the opening of The Dark Knight. That's pretty similar in terms of the tones, I feel. And you got Argo, which is practically a guy pretending like he's someone that he's not to perform quote unquote justice You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, I've always just thought Ben Affleck would do a good job directing a Batman film anyway. And the fact that he's starring in it, I was like, well, you know, I expect WB to be like, no, we'll give him the job as well to direct the thing. Which, I mean, there could be worse directors they could have chosen.
Yeah, it's true. And I'm a bigger fan of Affleck's writing because, like, obviously he wrote Good Will Hunting, which, you know, already establishes him as a decent writer. And I believe he won an Academy Award for that. And obviously, Gone Baby Gone, The Town. I'd be more comfortable with that. The directing, I'm not as sold on the directing.
Do you think it's too much responsibility for him?
Yeah, I do. And I think that he's made decent films. I don't know. None of these films that he's really made are massive blockbusters. Like, no. There wasn't a lot riding on it. Like, Argo did well and it won awards, but to me,
won Best Picture.
I'm critical of Argo, but that's a whole nother discussion. And The Town wasn't a massive blockbuster film, so we'll see. And you know, sometimes you just need to go for it. That's probably what Affleck's doing. But when you think of it, you're thinking Ben Affleck is going to be one of the middle men, like basically dictating this whole entire universe and how this is going to be playing out. Is that really the guy that you want at the center of that? Some people will say yes, some people will say no. I'm kind of iffy on that.
I mean, I've recently become much more of a bigger Affleck fan. It's like it was like due to his directing stuff and then seeing some of his acting in his films, but even recently, I've watched some of his earlier stuff. Like I watched Dazed and Confused not that long ago. Which, granted, he didn't have that big of a role, but I thought he did a good job for what I thought he was actually really good for what he was in. And literally today, I just watched Mallrats again. Not that big of a role, but I think he did a very good job in it. It's like recently, I've just been more of an Affleck guy, and I've just like even watching some interviews of his. He seems like just a cool guy, he doesn't seem like one of these guys who let the fame get to his head or anything like that. And even when you listen to Kevin Smith talk about Affleck, he talks about him like he's just a guy. He doesn't say like, "Oh, Affleck, this big Hollywood name." He just talks about him like he's just a mate, which like that's just kind of made me a bit more of a fan of him, I guess you'd say. I don't know what your thoughts on Affleck is overall, but yeah.
Yeah, you know, I'm probably being a little bit too hard on Mr. Affleck here, but the optimism in me says it'll be fine, and he's a decent enough actor, and he's a decent enough director and writer, so it'll be fine. And yes, you're right, there could have been some worse people to do it, but I'm pretty pleased overall, and I want to see what happens, and I'm going to enjoy the ride regardless. You know.
We're also talking briefly about Comic-Con. There was other things like Hateful Eight, which
massive fan of Tarantino.
Well, that's something we can talk about quite a bit because I'm just a huge Tarantino guy as well. I mean, like the first thing I saw of his was Reservoir Dogs, and which is funny enough because that is his first film, and because I always knew of Tarantino, like, going in, like, once I became more of a cinephile, I just always heard the name. You know, it's like, he's always been like that. It's like, it's never been like, oh, that film looks interesting, who do you know? Oh, Quentin Tarantino. He's just always been a guy that I just heard of within the film world, and when I eventually watched Reservoir Dogs, I could understand where everyone was talking about just because of that one film, and then I watched Kill Bill after that, which again was another completely different style of Tarantino, but again I love that film as well. And Pulp Fiction is my favourite of his and easily one of my favourite films of all time, and I just love Tarantino as well. And Hateful Eight just seems like it's going to be like just again I was kind of like a bit upset that he was going back to the Western genre because where Django I liked, it wasn't one of my favourites of Tarantino's. And I was kind of wanting him to explore another genre, but from the sounds of things, it's like he's doing all the right stuff with it. From what I've heard of people that saw that went to the Comic-Con panel.
Yeah. See, you know that's great. Tarantino's great. I've enjoyed all of his work, maybe with the exception of being slightly not impressed with Death Proof.
That's a take or leave it for me as well.
But again, look, this is his 8th film. He's had essentially no duds. He's pretty much hit home, and that's hard to do as a major filmmaker. There's a lot riding on every picture. There's a lot, just a couple years ago, Inglourious Basterds. That's a film that's definitely going to be massively remembered. Django was a good film, not as good as Inglourious or a lot of his others, but it was a really, really good film, and it's a lot better than most people could do. Now, with Hateful, it's interesting, because I think he's always kind of had these Western elements in all of his films.
Oh, yeah, Kill Bill.
Definitely employs. Kill Bill, even Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Now, I heard something around the lines is that he wants to almost do like a trilogy of Western films.
Yeah, I heard that as well. Like, he said, like, you're not a great Western filmmaker unless if you make 3 Westerns or something like that. So that's him essentially heavily hinting that he would do a 3rd film. Which, I mean, again, whatever he does, I'm going to watch. I'm going to see, because...
Isn't he involved in like a crossover film with Zorro or something right now?
I haven't heard about that. That's interesting. If that's...
I'll look into that right now.
If that is true, that's incredibly interesting. And I would never have thought that would have... I never thought about it, but thinking about it now, that sounds so amazing. Just like those 2 names, like Tarantino and Zorro. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah, and he's obviously working on Kill Bill 3 as well.
It's like with that, it's like we add the end to it.
Yeah, and I'll say you right now, Kill Bill 1 and 2, Volume 1 and 2, are my 2 least favorite Tarantino films. I'll call it out right now. That's a controversial opinion for some, but I don't. So Kill Bill 3, I'm excited for it because it's obviously a Tarantino film, but I'm not completely like, oh yeah, this is the greatest thing ever.
Oh yeah. I mean, Volume 1 is maybe in my top 3 favorite Tarantino films. Volume 2 is probably, alongside Death Proof, my least favorite. I've yet to see Jackie Brown, but it's probably my least favorite of Tarantino's films. And the fact that he might be continuing, I'm like, first of all, we had the end. We literally ended the story. Like, we literally killed Bill. It literally, that's the end of the thing. And a friend of mine, James, who's also a member of the channel, he keeps trying to persuade me, like, oh no, it would be cool. I'm like, well, what do you mean? It's like, because he said apparently, like, there were things going around, like, the woman who got her arm chopped off, and the woman who now has no eyes would train the little girl whose mum Beatrix killed in front of her to take revenge on Beatrix. I'm like, that just sounds like a massive convoluted mess just like,
that's an interesting idea.
It's interesting, but for me personally, it's like when he said that to me, I was like, that just seems like a massive, just like unnecessary, like, just we're trying to make a sequel, we're trying to make a 3rd film, and it's like, I think it ended the way it, like, again, not the biggest fan of Volume 2, but again, it ended perfectly for what it needed to do. So it's like,
yeah,
I'd rather Tarantino do more original stuff than do Volume 3 of Kill Bill, personally.
Yeah, and, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to, cipher through this as in terms of like a trilogy or something like. Is this pressure from a studio to do a Kill Bill 3? No, obviously it wouldn't be, because Tarantino is very vocal in his essentially his independence in doing what he wants to do, and obviously that's not it. But this whole sequel culture, and this is something we briefly talked about on the first episode of Pan Tilt Zoom about summer blockbusters and sequels, and driving home big numbers off an established IP. But in the future, we would definitely want to talk more about the culture of sequels as a whole. But I don't know if this is the right thing for Tarantino, and for him saying all the time that I'm only going to do so many films before I get too old, and I'm going to retire and all this stuff. I'd rather see him, instead of milk something out that's not necessarily as good, focus on something that's original, because he's the best when it comes to original IPs.
Oh yeah, I mean, he's probably my favorite screenwriter, like just purely for like the dialogue, like simply like, for example, the opening scene in Reservoir Dogs when they just sat around the diner and they're talking about very just normal stuff, and yet I'm just so engaged and listening to them rant on about tips and stuff, like, and it's even so much so that I've had that debate with friends of mine from watching the films, like, yeah, I mean, you're supposed to tip. I'm like, No, I don't automatically tip. But then we have like these debates purely from Tarantino's writing. Like, I think like just purely from that, it's like, yeah,
Yeah, very much. To me, if Tarantino wasn't a filmmaker, he would be one of the world's greatest novelists of his time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he's definitely said that he's going to write books after he's done with films.
Yeah.
In terms of at least film theory books, which would be highly interesting as a filmmaker myself. But I would be interested in that. And yeah, essentially his scripts are. And he's talked about this before, which is interesting, with his good friend Robert Rodriguez, obviously, who did Sin City and stuff like that.
Yeah, from Dust Till Dawn.
Yeah, and he's like, I essentially write my scripts like they're books, and then I just adapt that to a screen, almost like, a book to film adaptation. I'm like, that's why it's so good. That's why it's so rich, because there's literally hundreds of pages that he's written, and then he has all this great information, and then he picks and chooses essentially what's the best, and condenses it into one great 2.5-3 hour film or whatnot, and then just really hits home with that. And that's what really sets Tarantino apart from other directors as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's like comparing him as well to like in terms of screenwriting wise to Christopher Nolan, who, directing-wise, I do prefer Christopher Nolan to Tarantino, but I do admit that sometimes with Nolan's scripts, it can get a little bit like, okay, what are we doing here? Are we just sat here explaining the whole, like Interstellar? I mean, again, really like that film, but there are points where I'm like, can we just have Matthew McConaughey not explain everything that's in front of us at points? Yeah. Whereas Tarantino... He knows when to show and when to tell, and when to integrate those two different elements to make it just such a rich moment in the film, I feel.
Yeah, and that's the problem. I felt like you were hinting at Interstellar there, or even say something like Terminator Genesis.
Yeah.
If you have to have characters explain the exposition, if they have to use essentially a character as exposition all the time to explain stuff, you might be doing a lot of it wrong.
Yeah.
And you can do exposition well. I would hint at something like the Harry Potter movies or books, where Hermione Granger is essentially just one big exposition after exposition after exposition, because she's essentially so smart that she's explaining everything that's going on.
I never thought about it.
And I feel like that goes well in the movies better than it could have. But yeah, that's laziness essentially. If you talk to a handful of writers, if the exposition's blatantly obvious, like it is with Matthew McConaughey or whatever, explaining stuff blatantly in the film, that's just laziness in the part of writing. And obviously Tarantino is not lazy when it comes to writing. No. And one last thing I want to say about the Hateful Eight.
Go on, before we divert into something else.
Yeah, for sure. Is what will make this film a better Western, or I guess Django's a Western, and I'd say to a large part like a blaxploitation film. But what will set Hateful Eight apart is, I think, the cast is a lot better. I love Christoph Waltz. He's one of my favorites.
Yes.
I'm not a massive Jamie Foxx fan, but look at this cast that you have for Hateful Eight: Kurt Russell, Samuel L. Jackson,
Michael
Walter
Madsen,
Goggins, Tim Roth. Yeah, all these really, 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 really great actors.
Tarantino
and that
veterans as well. They're all Tarantino alumni, so
yes,
it's just it's like someone mentioned it, saying it's essentially like Reservoir Dogs, like from the seams of things, it's like Reservoir Dogs but in the West, like just a Western version of Reservoir Dogs, because you got each character is a character, like they're not just like they have something to them. Like I mean, like from the teaser trailer that was shown before Sin City 2, which had the cowpuncher and the Confederate and the little man, the Mexican. I'm like, I know the characters right off the bat because of what they literally named that. So it's like, it's gonna be amazing to see each actor bounce off and fall back and forth off each other. I feel like, I mean, Sam Jackson is. I mean, reading Tarantino dialogue is just amazing. I feel like it's just I agree. Yeah, I mean, you can't beat that so much. It's like so much so, like ever since Pulp Fiction, he's been in every single Tarantino film in some way. It's like you can't have a Tarantino film without Sam Jackson at this point. It's like having a Scorsese film without De Niro or DiCaprio. It's like one of those things. It's
exactly, and obviously Samuel owes a major part of his career to Tarantino in terms of critical acclaimed acting. So that pair works well, and I'm glad that it's continuing, and it probably will continue until at least one of them dies. So you know what I mean? It's a good thing, and that's always a lock for at least a great performance.
And touching on what we briefly just mentioned, though, I'm guessing you saw Terminator Genesis?
Yes, I did.
What were your thoughts on that film? I'm just curious.
At this point, pessimistically looking at it, they're making films as much as they can before the rights go back to James Cameron. They're trying to milk out as much money as they can before it goes back to James Cameron. I think, just disregarding the last two films, regardless if they're good or bad, is kind of being a little bit cocky, since your film T5 wasn't necessarily good, and having essentially 7 separate timelines that you're following and going back to is too much. People won't understand that. You're doing a summer blockbuster. It's not supposed to be something that's completely if you can't understand it, then it's not going to be a summer blockbuster worth mentioning. And it made a lot of money, obviously, but I think a lot of people had problems with it, and I don't think, even if it made money, I don't think it's going to be remembered by people, because it's like you go in, you don't know what's going on, you just see some explosions and stuff, and you walk out and you're like, I have no clue what was going on, but it was all right.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not sure if you saw my review, but I mean, the raw footage of that is like, I'll basically just explain what I usually do when I do a review. I usually go to cinema, I come back from it, type up my thoughts in bullet points, just so I keep it in mind. Let the film sit with me for the day, and then the next day I do the review. Whereas with Genesis, I refuse to call it Genesis, because if the film can't even be bothered to spell the name of it right, I refuse to say it right. So I came back from it and I just sat down and turned the camera on, just because I was so it's like, that's why and I went on for half an hour, and then that's why my review may have seemed all over the place, because I didn't have any logical thought path through it all. I was just ranting and raving. And looking back at my review, I mean, I still dislike the film to unbelievably, but because I watched my review the other day, and I thought I might have went a bit too far with how angry I was at this. I was like, I might have been a bit too far, and I even know I went too far when I was editing the review, because I basically said this in my when I did my review, and literally as soon as I turned the camera off, I was like, maybe I shouldn't have said that. I literally went I can't remember exactly what I said, but I said you don't deserve to be a Terminator fan if you like the film. And I'm like, I shouldn't have said that, because I mean, it's anyone's entitled to their own opinion. I don't think I should take away their fandom for the fact they might have enjoyed this film. And I mean, I had a good conversation with Matt from Flick Fanatics in the comment of that section, because I mean, I didn't know he liked the film. I didn't know he enjoyed the film. So
no, he did.
Yeah. And it's and he said, and I got a massive paragraph from him, and then I sent an even bigger paragraph back to him, and then no, it was simply just he was explaining what he thought, and then I was like, here's my reason.
That's great.
Here's my reasoning. Here's me talking about the film now that I've calmed down. It's here's the video to entertain you. Here's actually what I now think about it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've been victim of that in my reviews too. The one in particular I remember that I'm notorious for, it wasn't that bad, but it's still, I try to keep a pretty unbiased approach to the movie, regardless if I'm a massive fan or hate it a lot.
Yeah.
It was Unbroken, the Angelina Jolie film. I'm not an Angelina fan. I don't like her movies. I don't like her really. And I watched Unbroken, and then I did a review, and I put this subtle diss in at her. I'm something along the lines of overall, this film was weak and, could have used a little, essentially a little fire under its butt to, get going, because it was so tame for such a, difficult and, heart-wrenching story.
Yeah.
But, that's Angelina, too. She kind of sucks. Like, I essentially said that.
Yeah.
I was like, I look back at it, like, a couple weeks later, and I was like, damn. And, people were like, wow, you're really going after Angelina there. And I was like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
But
I simply want to check out that film because I'm really getting into Jack O'Connell.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, was he good in that film? Because I
think it was okay. It's not. It's nothing. Nobody really did overly good, but
right.
That's partially because of direction as well. You know what I mean? That's partially how the director gets the actor to do. And obviously, a good example of that is some good actors that were in the Star Wars prequels that gave bad performances. So like it really has to do with how the director really taps into getting the actors to do what needs to be done. And I feel that Angelina obviously needs to grow in that regard and really be clear at communicating what she wanted better. And I feel that that really affected performances.
Yeah, because I mean, I first saw Jack O'Connell in Starred Up, and I thought that was a like extremely underrated performance of last year. I felt like it was extremely good, and I even watching 71, which was a film match, I was like, that's all right. He was the one part of the film which is like I'm watching it because of him. So it's like it's like he's become an actor that to me that's recently popped on the radar for myself to be like, I should keep an eye out for him and what he's doing and everything. But yeah, I mean, it's like the film Unbroken never just like when I saw the trailers, I was like, looks, nah. I don't. It doesn't look like a film I need Rochelle to see. And
my best overview of it is a highly sanitized version of the actual events, meaning the blood, the guts, the gore, the brutality, the violence was toned down significantly.
Right.
That affects the overall message, the overall emotional output that you could easily have got people in on. If you give somebody a heart-wrenching story, then they're going to go crazy over that. An audience goes crazy over that. Like, and they didn't go enough for that. They were like kind of scared to do that. So that's overall what... if Unbroken was done by Angelina after she'd done a couple more films, I think it would be a better film. But unfortunately, we got what we got.
Yeah. I mean, like, films like that, it's like you always see those types of films like later on in the year, like where they're trying to push for an Oscar. And I just find it so cringeworthy when a film's trying its best to be like, look, we're going for an Oscar, and it goes nowhere. Like, it's just like, oh, you tried at this one thing and you can't even do that. Like, it's like, from what I heard, J. Edgar was like that, and like, Lee Daniels as the butler was like that as well. It just, those, like, you can just tell from the trailers, it's like they're trying their best to be like, look, we're emotional, we're gonna go for the gold, and they go nowhere, and it's just like, oh, well. Like that. No, that's a shame.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, I mean, like recently, like since we're kind of on the topic, like the Academy Awards, like the one just gone, I was actually kind of pleased with those, like that whole of like the winners and everything, because it's like it didn't get to the point where I was like, of course that. Well, aside from Eddie Redmayne winning, I was like, of course, and then like. But then most of the part, I was genuinely surprised when Birdman won Best Picture. Like, because I was like, it's going to Boyhood. Boyhood's getting it all, and then Birdman. I was like, oh, well, okay.
Yeah. Hint for next week is for Pan Tilt Zoom on our second episode. We will be delving a little bit in with one of our guests on the culture around awards and whether or not they matter and things like that. Hint. DiCaprio, but this year was good. There was a great crop of movies to pick from in 2014, and that really makes the award show. If the year sucks, then the awards are going to suck. Because that means one film's going to come in and sweep it all up. And this year, 2 films tied for most amount.
Budapest and
4.
Birdman,
Yeah, and that's great because 4, that's really nothing compared to what we've seen. And Whiplash picked up a couple that a lot of people didn't. It was such a big year that a couple films that I thought really deserved it were left off, like Nightcrawler. I think Gyllenhaal should have been up for Best Actor.
Gyllenhaal was easily the best performance of that year, I feel.
Yeah, and there was 20. There's like 23 major awards, and I predicted 21 right, and I'm pretty proud of that. And it's hard because there's a lot of great films out, and as a film watcher, what can you ask for more other than a bunch of great pictures?
Oh yeah. I mean, like the 8 nominees that were last year, I was like, this is a good list. This is a decent list, and for the first time ever, I managed to watch every nomination before the award, so I had an opinion on all of them. And the only one that I was kind of a bit like iffy on was Selma. I didn't really care for Selma too much. And
oh, really?
Yeah.
I was not overall with the awards. I wasn't big into American Sniper. I absolutely hate that film. Selma, I can do, but maybe I don't get. Well, no, I'm not going to say I'm that ignorant, but I don't get American Sniper because I'm not American. But I've seen tons of American films. I've seen a lot of patriotism and propaganda type films, and that one was the pinnacle of them all.
Oddly enough, for me, it's like I remember having this conversation with Tim as well, because he said he really didn't like American Sniper as well, and I was like, I'm genuinely surprised because I enjoyed American Sniper because I was going into it thinking, I legitimately went into it because I saw like the nominations were getting out, and Bradley Cooper was nominated for Best Actor when I was expecting Gyllenhaal, and I was like, oh, bring it on, Cooper, what have you got? Because it's like the film came out like a day after the nominations were announced in the UK, so I was like, yeah, bring it on, Cooper, and bring it on like American Sniper. Give me your patriotism that I'm not going to care about because I'm British. And then I watched it. I was like, it's not as bad as I thought it would. As much like it got like only until the end. But at that point, I was like, well, that's how everyone was like. Everyone was like, yeah, Chris Kyle, American hero. So it was like, I get that, but it was like I thought they were going to portray him like, oh, he's such a superhero, but it was like the way that I felt Cooper portrayed Chris Kyle was like, I don't really want this. But I guess I was going into it expecting a lot more just like F yeah America than it delivered. Yeah. And I thought like it was it's by no means is it like an amazing film, but it's like it was an intense film, I felt, and it was better than like compared to another like war film recently. I thought it was better than like The Hurt Locker, which won Best Picture.
Oh yeah, The Hurt Locker. Yeah, no, I agree. I think my main problem, well, there's a lot of problems for me with American Sniper, but I'm not a big fan of Clint Eastwood's directing style. I find it the most bland, boring style ever. So going into this,
I can understand. Yeah,
I was like, oh god, here we go, not another one. And just when you read back on what they could have done with American Sniper, who they had attached to direct American Sniper.
Didn't they have Spielberg at one point?
Spielberg was big. Bradley Cooper wasn't even going to be in the movie at one point. It was going to be Chris Pratt as the main guy at one point. Not that I have any problem with Chris Pratt or Bradley Cooper, so it didn't really matter in that regard. But like, if Spielberg directed that, it would have been a completely different movie.
Oh yeah. Wasn't David O. Russell as well? I think I can't remember.
Yes, David O. Russell was attached to it. I might be completely wrong in this, but I feel like Ron Howard was maybe attached even for a while.
That sounds like that sounds similar to what I've heard.
Maybe not, but still, you know what I mean. Like there was a lot of people attached to this at various different points. So that would have been interesting. But yeah, American Sniper didn't do it for me. But that was really the only one out of that major cast. But overall, American Sniper could have been a lot worse. So it was a pretty good prop. You know what I mean?
It was at least well acted. I felt it was at least it had. I think Sienna Miller did actually a really good job as well. So at least had two pretty good performances in my opinion. So it could have done a lot worse. And but it's like this is funny as well because I mean when talking to Tim about this as well, because I was trying to think of like any British or just any non-American war films, and I had a like. Big like, oh yeah, hell yeah, our country, and I had a really hard time thinking about it because it was, and I don't know, I wouldn't say it just dawned on me, but it was like, wow, America really like trying to be like, yeah, we're amazing in a terms of war films, and that's what I think can turn me off when watching an American war film. If you're gonna, I mean, it's not. Again, I don't say this in a political way. I say this in just the fact that you're not trying. You're playing towards one country. You're not playing towards everyone in the world, which you should be trying to, at least if you're making a film, I feel.
I agree. That's what you think of when you think of war film. Like, as coming from film school and stuff, I've seen a lot of war and propaganda films, Soviet films, even a lot of German films even. But like, and you can think of other big notable films that have got a lot of praise, like Soldier of Orange, Come and See, The Bridge. You have there's another one that I'm thinking about, a Canadian one called Passchendaele. Downfall, Das Boot, a German one. These are non-American films, but those don't come to mind first for a lot of people when you think war films. You think Saving Private Ryan.
Saving Private Ryan is literally the first war film that pops in mind for me.
Exactly, or even something recent like Fury or something like that. You know what I mean? You've seen these films a lot of times. Yeah,
it's interesting how different countries handle their war films, I feel. And especially during like each time as well, like as the decades go on. Because I mean, three of my favorite war films are three completely different types of war films. They're Saving Private Ryan, Inglourious Bastards, and The Great Dictator. They're
The Great Dictator, Chaplin,
and that's mainly due to my love for Chaplin. But I mean, it's like they're three completely different war films in three different times and three completely different filmmakers. Which is,
I studied a class, popular American cinema, and a large portion of that was talking about political. There's always something political going on that dictates the film, regardless if the film is outwardly political or not. And I did a report essentially on the difference between the portrayal of the Vietnam War in two films, and the two films I picked was Rambo Part 2 and Good Morning Vietnam, the Ron Williams film.
Yeah.
And it's just like night and day. And that also has to do with the fact that they're made at two different times. Good Morning Vietnam was made after the Vietnam War, so people are starting to be a little bit happier again. Where even Rambo and stuff like that was made kind of, within that. But the difference in the portrayal of war, and that's what's great about Inglourious Bastards too, because it's making such a mockery of it almost. And that's great, and a lot of people kind of forget that even too. Inglourious Bastards as a war film, but it very much is. It's when you type in, like I'm looking right now at Google, I typed in American war films, and 5th on the list that pops up at the top of Google, most frequently mentioned, is Inglourious Bastards.
It's one that I put on regularly, just in terms of a film in general. Like when I just want someone on in the background, I just put on Inglourious Bastards, and I'm like, well, like it's one of these films which I'm like, I'll put it on in the background, then I'm sucked in for like the entire runtime.
I agree.
And again, it's the whole Tarantino thing, just like that. That's one film that slowly became like my second favorite of his. Like it was like for a while it was Pulp, Reservoir, and then kind of everything else in a jumble, and then it was like Inglourious just moved up and everything. Yeah. It's like recently we've been having less of war films as well. I find, like, just generally, or they're like or like it's once every few years, I guess, and it's built up unbelievably. Like it's over marketed, it's over hyped and everything because they're trying to make it seem like the best flipping thing ever. And it's like it's almost going like in the Western genre, I feel, in terms of like how frequently we're getting them.
Westerns died off a lot. And Tarantino is probably one of the only major people. And there's been other attempts at doing it, and it really hasn't caught on. Like True Grit, the Coen brothers, Slow West or whatever.
I'm really interested in that film, Slow West. Because I'm a Fassbender fanboy, so and plus it generally looks really interesting.
And there's been some subtle attempts at that. But again, what people are regularly aware of, like the spaghetti western, the Sergio Leone films, or something like that. That was a whole era of Italian film directors that came over here and started making spaghetti westerns and things like that. So, like, if people want that back, I don't know if we're ever going to get something like that. But
we're in a different time period where it's like that was the thing, and now like we got literally superhero films, and those are the thing. We get like
they're very much an extension of war films in a lot of ways, just more fantastic.
Yeah, we get like 5 a year near enough. It's becoming one of those things, and it's like. Yeah, I mean, even so far as like 10 years ago, we didn't have this many superhero films, because I think even then we were still trying. Well, then again, 10 years, I say that, but we had Batman Begins 10 years ago this year, so it's like, I think at that point they was just starting to be like, okay, maybe we can make them work. Mm-hmm. And now they just blew up into billion-dollar money-making machines.
Well, yeah, the fact that Iron Man just did astronomical numbers in the box office just really opened the floodgates for that. And even Sam Raimi's Spider-Man's to a larger extent really opened those doors. But yeah, again, it took one good film in Iron Man, still to this day my favorite Marvel film, to really just open the door, just like completely flood the market. And that's what it takes, you know what I mean? It was Lord of the Rings that opened the floodgate for all these kind of fantasy films to be made. That it's kind of slowly dying off. Honestly, I think The Hobbit, because of how poorly it was received, especially critically, I don't know, this might be a bit outlandish, but I think that might be the end of these massive, big, high fantasy films and such saturation.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, well, even in between Lord of the Rings and Hobbit, we never got that much of a fantasy kick. We got the Harry Potter films, but that started at the same time as Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, we got that happen, and then once Harry Potter ended, it was kind of like, quick, get any young adult novel, and then we've been having just these slew of just mediocrity.
And I guess we have the Warcraft film coming out, and
that I'm interested in, because it's like, it's Duncan Jones, and I've loved his other 2 films, so I'm like, give it a go.
Duncan Jones. Yeah, Duncan Jones is a great film director. Obviously,
Zowie Bowie.
Fun fact. Yeah, son of David Bowie. And back in the day, I played World of Warcraft quite a bit, so I'm intrigued now as a Warcraft fan, as a fan of Blizzard, and read a lot of the lore behind this in the books that they put out. I'm really interested in it. But again, if it does well, they're definitely going to do more films, and you could see that. But I don't think it's going to be a massive trend.
No, if Warcraft does really well, that could be the kick for video game movies. And even so, I just remember this. We got the Assassin's Creed movies scheduled for next year as well. So with Fassbender, and it's essentially the same team behind the Macbeth film, which I find really interesting.
It could be really good.
And if those 2 films do well, I'm not necessarily saying we got a new kick in a trend, because we still got every single Marvel film in the whole DC Cinematic Universe to happen, but we could see it being taken more seriously in terms of like who they pick to do the films.
Yeah, and I was just thinking too, also Star Wars now.
Oh, and
this is all Disney essentially for the most part. And I was just thinking this hurts other areas of fantasy or action adventure too, because when they're scouting out a director to direct one of these Marvel or Star Wars films, they're essentially poaching off these talented young directors or whatever that could go on to do other possibly original things.
Mark Webb.
I was thinking about that. Mark Webb.
That's so much pretend. 500 Days of Summer.
Yeah, Mark. Hey, some just don't hit it. You know what I mean?
To be fair, I didn't mind the Amazing Spider-Man films, so it's
yeah. Hey, Mark Webb still has time.
Oh yeah,
he can still do some great things.
I think he's doing the Limitless TV show, which I'm like, that's interesting for him to do.
Cool, yeah. I'd be down for him to do that, and sometimes M. Night Shyamalan's turn to TV as well.
I don't hate him.
You're one of the few.
I don't. But here's the reason. I've seen 3 of his films, Signs, Unbreakable, and The Last Airbender, and
2 of those are good.
And I like Signs and Unbreakable so much that I'm like, there's something in there, and I despise The Last Airbender so much as well that it's like I think if he mucks up with The Visit, I'm just like, okay, you're done now, because it's like because I feel like because I mean I've yet to see all of his like Sixth Sense and even some of his small like The Village and stuff like that to really have this opinion, but it's like he went from doing these low budget type of stuff to doing like these big studio films, and if he can't hit it with indie stuff with The Visit, I think it's like, well, just don't do it anymore.
Yeah, it's funny because he was heralded, and this
the
is
next
stupid.
Spielberg.
Yes, the next Spielberg, which is dumb. That's lazy of writers to do that because like it's easy just to pin a new director on that. But yeah, he needs to do indie and he needs to get back in that way. That could be the revival of his career. If not, I think he needs to take a step back. He still could have a very fruitful career producing.
Oh yeah.
But no, I agree.
I mean, it's just like The Last Airbender broke my heart in so many ways because I mean, because that's my favorite TV show ever.
Yo, really? Yeah, I'm a massive fan of that as well.
I binged through that show so hard. It was like, because I mean, I watched it sort of in Nickelodeon when it was airing, but that was at the time. But I would have been I think I would have been 10 when that was airing in Nickelodeon. So so I would have been. I wouldn't have been fully paying attention. But I recently got the box set for Christmas and I just binged through it all. And I was like, this is literally the best TV show. I was like, it's so good.
Yeah,
and then I refreshed myself on the Shyamalan film, and I just hated it even more, like unbelievably.
Yeah.
Because it's like I did see that film in cinema in 3D.
Wow. Yeah.
And my mum walked out of that film saying, "I've got a migraine." Like we left the cinema going, we got headache. I'm like, yeah. And that's when I started to be like, maybe 3D isn't great.
No, yeah.
But yeah, the Last Airbender, it's like looking back at it, it's like they try to fit an entire season in one film, and the thing that just really made me just kind of really just say, what were you doing? Is like, hey, the Earthbenders, let's imprison them in Earth. Like,
well, they used the wrong name for the main character. His name's Aang. They pronounce it Ung. Now, that's my roots. Like, I hosted, along with a couple other people, an Avatar: The Last Airbender podcast / Legend of Korra podcast for 2.5 years. So that's my roots. Yeah. I love the show.
I still need to see Korra, and I still need to read the comics. But yeah, it's
I've read the comics too. And I've met like one person that's actually liked the film. And I can't really understand the reasoning, but all to them if they enjoy the film.
Yeah, all power to them that they found some enjoyment in a film like that.
And the creators of Avatar essentially denounced the film, basically being like, well, we were supposed to have more control over this, and then they basically said no, and then we said, okay, then we don't want to be a part of this, and then they made a crappy film. So let's just leave it at that.
It was something else, that film.
Yeah, for sure, man.
But the TV show was, again, something else, but in a completely different way. That was just... Yeah, because, I mean, about the time of when I really started watching that film, I was really into martial art. I was really, really into martial arts cinema. It's like, because I watched, like, for, like, Hero, House of Flying Daggers, Ip Man, and then I got on that show, and I was like, it's essentially animated this, which is just amazing. And it's just... Yeah. The characters in that show as well are just perfection, I feel. It's like...
No, yeah, it's true. The writing's impeccable.
It's just like one episode which stops me from fully loving it. It's The Great Divide, which I'm like, that could have been better. But yeah. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that show's great. Yeah. Yeah, it's like animation in general needs to take more from that show, I feel.
Yeah, no, yeah, I agree. And Korra is very much a good, as good as a another, like, a spin-off, I guess. I hate using that word, especially for Korra, because it's great, but as good as a spin-off could be, it had its shaky points, but that had to do mainly with studio, Nickelodeon basically constantly shitting on them. But
didn't that get mucked around saying, it's only on the website now, and it never got, and then it just got,
funding problems, massive delays between each season, date of release being pushed around, time in which it aired being pushed around constantly, last season being essentially kicked off of television, even though it had great ratings, especially when they just left it alone.
Mm-hmm.
It just had, they basically took their funding away, so instead of having to do 2 less episodes, they had to do essentially like a smaller filler episode, but overall the show is incredibly good. Season 3 is probably my second favorite season of the entire universe together. Avatar Season 3 is my favorite by far, but Korra Season 3 is my second. It's really good, and you can tell that they're definitely not one-hit wonders, these guys.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, season, like, book 1, book 2, book 2, and it's like, I loved book 2 so much, but I also loved the last few episodes of book 3. Because they were just, like, those were just the perfect finale. It's like people go on about Breaking Bad, which was a good finale as well. That was a really good finale of Breaking Bad as well. But I mean, that when you talk about just, like, just everything coming together for just, like, a great end, it was just, like, that's what it is. And I mean, Breaking Bad's another conversation as well. That's just...
Yeah, and that's the reason I'm in film, Breaking Bad. That's
really?
Reason why. Yeah, truly. I was just talking about it the other day with some people, but that was essentially the pinnacle moment. To put it quite bluntly, when I first saw Breaking Bad, it was like, shit, I really need to do this.
Yeah. I mean, that show got way overhyped for me, and I was watching it, and I got so much stuff spoiled for me that I was fighting to enjoy it. But I was still... Because it's like, I started to catch up on it when it was starting to finish. And when I was in university, there was a lot of people around there who were just going, it's Breaking Bad. And I got so much stuff. I got, like, the whole Gus... I'm going to... Brief spoilers for Breaking Bad for anyone who hasn't seen the show. I got Gus Fring's death spoiled for me. I got Hank's death spoiled for me. I got... I can't even remember what I got spoiled for me at this point. I got just so much stuff spoiled for me. It's like, so when it happened, I was like, you got blew off. Yeah, I get it. But it wasn't the fact that someone said, he dies. I saw a screenshot of him two-faced.
Oh, wow,
so I was like, okay.
No, I agree. Yeah, that's tough, man. And you can't, like, okay, obviously you can continue to watch Breaking Bad after spoilers, but that's part of the greatness of Breaking Bad. These just great sequences of writing and direction and just visual, essentially bliss on screen. Like, those experience them for the first time are something that you can never, like, forget or never experience again. And when they're spoiled for you, it sucks,
Spoilers just in general suck. Spoilers are a big. It's like a big topic for me in terms of I have a lot to say about them when people go like when people say when can you freely spoil something? I'm like, well, don't, because it's like I just feel like it's like at the end of the day, what it's like if a friend goes to if someone go if I'm gonna reference something that I'm not sure if anyone's most people seen. I would go, have you seen this? And if they go, no, I go like, do you have any interest in seeing this? And if they go, no, not really, I'm like, okay, you said it, blah, 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 blah. But I never just say it and then go, well, I wanted to see it. I'm like, well, you should have seen it by now. I don't do that because that's just a dick thing, I feel, just in general. Just taking some... It's like I had a friend who I briefly mentioned... the thing in, like, basically everything in Gone Girl. I just briefly said it to another friend who saw that film. And then someone said, what do you mean by that? I'm like, well, it'll be spoilers. And then go, well, I'm never going to see the film, so just tell me. I'm like, okay, you said it. So then I just said it. So it's
right.
Like... But I don't get these people who go, like... Because I tell you what, I got The Sixth Sense spoiled from me from a Lonely Island song.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I honest to God never knew the twist until I heard the song. So I'm like, well, And then when a friend of me tries to go, well, it's very well, you should know it by now. It's just like, no, I'm your father. I'm like, no, it's not like that, because one of them is a universal spectacle that's ingrained in our culture, and the other one was a more lower budget indie mystery film.
A hit.
It was a sleep. It's you can't compare that to Star Wars, I don't feel. So just saying like, well, it's like not knowing the Empire Strikes Back thing. I'm like, I don't get that at all. It's like even in videos, I'm like, when I know me and someone else saw the film, but in videos I'm going like, we just won't spoil it. Because what are we going to get out of it? A reference. Like, just a daft little reference we're going to make. That's what we're going to get out of it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's a great conversation. And obviously, Oscar, we're going to have you on our show.
Woo!
On Zoom. Yeah, that it would be definitely our pleasure. And that's a good topic for us to talk about. Because there's so much you can do.
To talk about that.
You can say so much about spoilers and the appropriateness of them, and even internet and the culture surrounding spoilers on the internet, and people completely blocking off social media after a Game of Thrones episode, and like the issues and the problems behind that as well.
Yeah.
And some people say, oh no, whatever, it's your fault if you didn't see the episode or you didn't see the movie, and some people are like, obviously not, that's not fair because we don't all have the same opportunity or we live in the same place, and you must experience this sometimes too, and I do to a certain extent as well, not being from the States and everything being entertainment based in the States, it being spoiled there first, and sometimes you don't get it at the same time, or sometimes I don't get it at the same time, so that creates a whole new other problem. You know what I mean?
I have friends who just simply can't afford to go and see it in the cinema. They just simply can't afford to pay for the new Game of Thrones DVD or go and see the new Avengers film or whatever. They just can't simply afford the money for that because they got life. So it's like people go, oh well, if you really cared about it, you should have seen it by now. I'm like, I don't think that's fair, because it's like some people literally can't afford an £8 ticket to the cinema, and £8, £9, whatever the cinema ends up feeling like. But that's something complete. That is its own thing. I feel just spoilers about. So they talk about spoilers, and like the whole spoiler culture, and especially in our internet, especially in the days of the internet age of like people just randomly like posting a page of like, oh look, this walking character died. I'm like, flip.
Yeah. No, I agree. This is crazy. We've went from Batman.
Oh yeah.
The Hateful Eight.
We went from that. We briefly talked about
Star Wars, Avatar, everything.
Yeah.
This is really spanning everything.
Yeah, and I just felt like we grazed the surface on this, and I looked at how long we've been recording for. So that's
right.
Yeah.
And this proves that these are deeper issues. You know what I mean? These are, or not even necessarily issues, but discussion-based things, and that's why I encourage people to talk about it, to comment, email, to talk to their friends, get people involved. Like Oscar said at the top of the show, we just started talking a week ago. I've never actually talked to him in this capacity, in this form of communication, until literally an hour ago.
Even with myself and Tim, we tweeting back and forth, and we message each other on YouTube and stuff. But me and you, we've literally just got in contact.
I contacted. I contacted you to see if you'd be interested in having me on the show, and because I'm eager to talk about things, because I feel like some people are definitely a little bit taken aback and scared to talk to people, but that's exactly what the community's for, and that's what people are there for. You know what I mean? To definitely check it out.
In the words of Shia LaBeouf, just do it.
Just do it, man. That's really a good conclusion.
The Shia LaBeouf, just do it, yeah. Do it.
But Yeah,
No,
again,
no, yeah, this
all
is
good. Thank you. Thank
no,
you.
yeah, this has been fun, and yeah, and I think this is like, and I mean, I'm sure this would not be the last of you a part of a heel cast, or
Sweet.
vice versa. If I'm going to be on Pan Tilt Zoom, or if we're going to collaborate on whatever, we don't know. It's the future. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah, no, I agree. Thank you for having me on. I'd love to come on again.
Yeah.
You're definitely going to be on an episode of Pan Tilt Zoom. We're doing them currently bi-weekly, but soon, depending on how everything goes in time, it might be a little bit more regular, and we need great, interesting, intellectual guests, and Oscar's definitely one of those people. And if you're just watching this for the first time, if I put a link up and sent you guys here, definitely subscribe to his channel and watch a lot of his content that he does with a bunch of other people too. It's just not him. So it's some great stuff, and you're definitely going to be pleased. And it's a lot different than mine, so that makes it a more fuller watching experience.
There you go. It's a variety. I mean? It's a variety of content that you can watch.
Variety.
If you fancy if you need to go quickly and you need to find out what someone's thoughts on Genesis is, go and watch Tyrell's. If you want to hear me rant and rave about it, rant and rage about it, then check out mine. And if you want to leave a hate comment on any of my foreign film reviews, even if I do praise them, feel free, you artsy, smarty freaks. And I get that. I give a positive review on a foreign film and I still get complaints about my opinion on it. I really don't get it. And
hey man, each their own.
But yeah, seriously, do check out Tyrell's channel, and as well as the Pan Tilt Zoom channel. I'll leave a link down below for the Twitters and the YouTubes to both of those.
Sweet
things. Check them out. I'm actually surprised you only recently hit 100 subs. I'm actually
man.
I thought you were ahead of me on that one. I really did.
No, yeah. I started 5 months ago maybe, and it's been going well. And I mainly do quick reviews. I'm getting back into it mainly because I've been so busy. But I do a film history series, and I've got 4 videos up. But the format is radically changing. I'm making a lot more visuals, so there's a lot of cool stuff to come with there. And there's also, this is something we announced too, just quickly, Pan Tilt Zoom's coming out, and it's a longer form podcast, but we're going to be doing shorter type content weekly on that channel. Some things coming up are, top 5 female sidekicks of all time and things like that. Some quick fun videos for people to think about, and we're not going to do just the blatant obvious ones. That's why we're going to go a little bit outside the box and let's think about it. Top 5 female sidekick characters of all time. That's a little bit harder, and we're going to give you some insight.
That sounds really interesting. And I'll be. Again, I'm free enough any time to be a part of anything.
Yeah, man.
I might be a little bit unavailable because I'm doing filming myself. I'm going to drop the bomb here. VHS Pirate Season 2 is somewhat on its way. I'll put it that way. We got a scene. We got 2 scenes done. We're slowly but surely doing getting the scenes done. We're experimenting in terms of how we're making it. We don't necessarily have a script. We got an outline. We're doing it mumblecore in a sense. We're trying that out. So yeah, slowly but surely, guys, with VHS Pirate Season 2, if anyone has seen the first season and are curious about that, so we are getting it made. It's just slowly but surely. But yeah, I think that's a good point to wrap it up. I think.
Yeah, thanks, man, very much. I appreciate that, and it was a great talk.
Yeah, it's good. And guys, links will be down below for Twitter and Facebook to everyone in the Heel crew, as well as Tyrell's plugs and whatnot. Follow him and whatnot. And till next time, guys, we shall see you later, and goodbye.